Garcia defeats Jose Benavidez by majority decision. Pretty good comeback win for Danny Garcia. 19 months off or so. Had to overcome some mental health issues and the like. Sometimes before I get started on the breakdown of the fight, sometimes I've seen athletes when they come to the end of their career, at times we've seen these kind of things happen where there's question marks. I don't know exactly what Danny's going through or the question marks in his mind, but I can remember certain guys. I remember distinctly being from New York. Jerry Cooney went through a lot of this when he was retired, and at the time people weren't so much in tune with keeping up with mental health stuff and whatnot. I will say Danny has nothing to be ashamed of in his career. Has had a terrific career, and based on last night's win, can obviously continue to attempt bigger and better things, as well as taking care of his family and the like. I think maybe personally, we got the airplane up above us. I think personally, I think it's a possibility that a lot of times athletes define themselves by their athletic careers, and maybe when it started to come to an end, there's a lot of question marks. I don't know. I think ultimately we all have to learn to be defined by the moment and be defined by our new goals that we set for ourselves. Sometimes it's easier said than done. Wishing the best to Danny on his continued recovery with his mental health. I thought he fought a very, very intelligent, savvy, veteran-style fight last night. Jose Benavidez was undaunted. Was not intimidated by the reputation of Garcia. Obviously, Benavidez has been a guy who has been hyped up in his career as well. I can remember when he was a young prospect, he was really the talk of his family and one of the top prospects in boxing, even before his brother Devin made a name for himself. Then obviously got himself into some trouble in the street and whatnot, and has always kind of hung around. We know he fought Terrence Crawford, so this was interesting going into the fight. It was interesting to see how Danny was going to look coming off the layoff. It was interesting to see if Jose was going to be able to sort of live up to a lot of the hype that had been heaped upon him when it was earlier in his career. It was kind of a crossroads fight in that way for both guys because must win in a lot of ways, But I think while Benavidez gave a good effort, threw a lot of punches, I think it was Danny's solid technical fundamentals that got the job done. He was able to win the rounds by being a little bit smarter. If you look at how Danny fights, he's not the quickest guy. He's very strong, but he's not the quickest guy, and he's not the most athletic guy. But I tell you, he's got a very particular fundamental style, and he knows what he is and he knows what he isn't, which I always say is very, very important in any fighter's identity and ability to win inside the ring. You got to know who you are and who you aren't, and then you've got to make the fights adjustments towards your strengths and make the fight into a kind of fight that complements the strengths of who you are. And I think Danny's always done a good job of that in his career. He's not the quickest guy on his feet, but even when he's moving, he's a pretty good boxer. But even though he doesn't have quick feet, but he always never over moves. A lot of times guys when they're boxing, sometimes they'll not so much over move to the point where they're not fighting, but they'll move to their own detriment at times. Danny, when he's moving just ever so slightly, taking a few steps here, taking a few steps there. He doesn't take big steps because he knows that he's the kind of fighter that has to plant and set to throw punches. So he's never gonna offset himself by over moving and then make it more difficult on himself to plant and shoot when he needs to shoot. And I think he does a very good job of that. And even when he's making those defensive moves yesterday with Benavidez is kind of the opposite. He's a little bit more athletic. I think for a guy who fights with his style, he needs to be a little bit more speedy. And ultimately, I think that was the undoing of him. Because he throws punches. He doesn't have to be set. He throws all kinds of punches, does Benavidez. Not even so much fundamentally sound, but when you're doing that, you've got to be very, very speedy. A lot of times I used to do that in my career, but in order to get away with that, you've got to be at least very, very speedy and be able to put combinations together. Benavidez doesn't have the quickest hands, but he will throw punches at you in any which way, and sometimes they do land, but he's not quick enough to make the combinations, by and large, be big, expansive combinations. And also, his balance wasn't always so great. He was landing some shots, sometimes putting Danny into some difficult circumstances. But I think ultimately, Danny always had the control overall. He got outworked in some of the rounds. I had it about 8-4. I didn't have it as wide as Steve Farhood had it on Showtime, but I also didn't have the draw that Walesko Roldan had on the official scorecards. I had it about 8-4, sort of like Glenn Feldman had the fight. But I think Danny's solid fundamentals. When he's punching, he's making it count. Even if he's not hurting Jose all night. You know, you can see the shots are counting better when it comes to Danny. He's shooting to the body. He's getting more weight on the shots, and he's sort of getting Jose's attention to where Jose has to be defensively responsible in order for him to not risk more. Jose's a brave guy. He's a good fighter. He let his hands go in different spots in the night, but Danny's better fundamentals and better balance ultimately had him even making Jose miss a lot of times, because Jose's not quick enough to fight in a way where he just throws punches rapid fire at any which way. He's not quick enough to do that. So when he was throwing those punches, Danny had him missing a lot, or even partially landing to where it wasn't doing a lot of damage. A lot of times I think it looked worse than it actually was, because Danny wasn't always punching back. But ultimately Danny was able to be set enough on his feet to where he was able to make Jose pay with some solid counter punches. He was also in some of those middle rounds giving some nice head movement and boxing very well right from where he was at, and he was mixing the shots down to the body very, very well. A little bit of deception there by Garcia off of his little rhythm head movement, or as they say in Spanish, movimiento de cintura, with that hip movement, So I think he did a pretty good job of that in the middle rounds as well, and it allowed him to, put together some nice punches, nice combinations. I think he played it safe to where he was going to the body very, very well and not risking himself to shoot up top to where Jose could use some of the athleticism and maybe make a miss and counter a little bit more often. And plus the body shots were pretty good and well thudding, so that maybe they may have slowed down Jose a little bit as well. We don't know. I think Jose fought a respectable fight. I think he, going the distance, and like I said, I had him winning about 4 rounds. But I just thought the rounds that Garcia won were more set, were more fundamentally sound, and were just better rounds to win. And ultimately he also won more of them, which is the mathematics of the fight. It's how you win the fight. So where do you go from here? I think Jose can still be sort of a gatekeeper. Danny Garcia now at 154 pounds. Interesting questions. I know Showtime showed some of the names at 154 pounds, and I know he mentioned Lara, but I think Lara fighting at 160 pounds now. I don't think Lara wants to make 154 pounds at his age anymore. They showed guys like Erickson Lubin and Fundora, and even Tony Harrison was mentioning yesterday that he'd love to fight Danny Garcia. But I think the name power of Danny Garcia at this weight class, there's some pretty good fighters at 154 pounds, but the name recognition power really only stays with, if you think about it, it's only Charlo and Danny Garcia. But you don't want to throw in Garcia right away in with a Charlo, right? Personally, the way I'd like to see it, obviously promotional boundaries aside, Harrison, I'd like to see Harrison and Fundora. That's probably an easy one to make. There are no promotional boundaries. I'd like to see Charlo take on Tim Tszyu, or even maybe a Fundora, and then maybe the winner of Fundora and Harrison if he's able to get by Tim Tszyu. I think Tim Tszyu is a bit underrated. He's a pretty good fighter, although Charlo is excellent himself, so it's not an easy fight for Tim Tszyu to try to accomplish his first world title. And where does that leave Danny Garcia? You're probably asking, okay, you're making all these matchups, but I'm not talking about Danny Garcia. I got a little bit of a wild card. Because it's a guy that I fought at the end of my career. My last career fight, Sam Eggington beat me. Sam Eggington is now fighting at 154 pounds, and since all the belts are taken up by Jermell Charlo, he's got all the belts. He's the undisputed champion. There's no belts to fight for. Hear me out a second, guys. I know you're probably thinking, where are you getting Sam Eggington from? If you haven't paid attention to Sam Eggington, he's been doing very well. He's also a very, very exciting TV fighter, and he just recently won the IBO world title at 154 pounds. Now, the IBO is not one of the big 4, but I do rank the IBO basically on the same level as the WBA regular title, as a secondary title the WBA decided to create. So it's a respectable belt to win on your way to maybe getting a Charlo fight. And if he's able to beat Eggington, listen, Eggington's pretty hittable, and a guy with the power of Garcia may knock him out. But at the same time, if you don't get Eggington out of there, bro, this guy is in your ass like white on rice, and he's in exciting fights every single year. He's in fight of the year candidates every time he fights. If you haven't watched Sam Eggington recently, I'd say you check him out on YouTube. He makes for very, very exciting fights, very, very exciting TV, and I'd like to see Garcia and Eggington, man. And I like to see Eggington get his shot at a big name. And now that he's bringing the IBO title to the table, he can probably lure a guy like a Danny Garcia. And Danny Garcia still hasn't got his feet completely wet at 154 pounds. Why take on the solid big name, big solid 154 pounders who don't even bring a big name yet, even though they're good fighters? You can carry the promotion on your own And let's face it, Eggington's never in a bad fight. So if you fight Eggington, you may knock him out because he's hittable, but if you don't knock him out, he's going to make you work. And Danny, from what I noticed last night, and this happens to us as we get older, he likes to fight at his pace. As we get older, we like to control the pace, have a comfortable pace. We fight like savvy, a little bit more like savvy veterans. And Danny, I thought, did a great job of that last night. So I think it's cool. I think it could be a fun TV fight. And also, I like the fact that it could give a secondary rather important title on the line, because Jermell Charlo has all the major world titles locked up. This could be an interesting one. The IBO world title between Sam Eggington and Danny Garcia. Let me know what you guys think of this. I haven't seen too many people talk about this. I don't think Eggington is with Matchroom anymore, so I think the fight could be makeable and doable. And I think it's a solid TV fight. I'm telling you, if you guys haven't watched the Eggington fight, check him out on YouTube. He's always in exciting fights. And I fought in my last career fight. He really pushes the pace very well. Not the best defensive fighter, but a very fun offensive fighter, and he's working on his defense as well. Listen, it's a solid fight, I think, for Danny Garcia, and it's a solid fight for Sam Eggington, and I think it's a fun fight for the fans to watch. And still, 154 pounds is fun. Like I said, the other guys could probably face each other the way I've just mentioned. Hopefully, the things can keep getting fun in the 154-pound division. But that's my take. Let me know what you think of Garcia's performance last night. Let me know what you think Garcia and also where Jose Benavidez goes from here. And also, let me know what you think of my possible matchup, my thinking of Sam Eggington versus Danny Garcia. Eggington is a guy who's a bit underrated, but he's been doing well, and he's bringing the IBO world title to the table if they're able to make that fight a fight that I personally think would be a fun fight to watch. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, and this is Paulie Malignaggi for Paulie TV.